Okay, hello, my fellow. Oh no, I see, because I turned that up. Hello, my fellow risers. Turn it up a little bit. Bop, 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 bop. Turn it up a little bit. Bop, bop, bop. 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 That's good. Okay, so we're trying this format. That's fun. Okay, great. Refresh. I do. There we go. Excellent. And so we are all set. It's a bit too much. Because. No. Why do you. Why are you zooming in that much, bro? Oh, I guess that's really not a big deal. But maybe move this over here. Move this here. Um, Pretty good. Not great, but um, it'll do. Okay. Okay, great. So then I have to try to stay. You know what? Bop 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 bop. All right. Oh, warning. This stream what? Open Studio. What? Warning: the current is lower than the recommended bitrate. We recommend that you use a what? They use a stream bitrate of 6800. Um. Open widget. Okay, now it says it's good, but we want excellent settings, stream. Wonder. Oh gosh, where did all those people come from? Um, go away. Subscribe though, and but right now I'm trying to figure out how to get the quality to be better. Actually, the quality doesn't look bad here. Okay, great. All right, let's do it. Self knowledge. Introduction. It has been a popular idea in the philosophical tradition, as popular as the idea that humans are rational animals, that humans are self knowing animals, where self knowledge is the knowledge humans have about their own mental lives. In fact, both rationality and self knowledge have been described as distinctive of humans. Boo. Among all animals, human beings are the only ones that can reason rationally and think about their own beliefs, desires, emotions, and so on. The idea of humans as rational animals and the idea of humans as self knowing animals are not independent of one another. Rationality and self knowledge are intertwined and they jointly support human agency, which we reject. The sophisticated capacity to consider one's own beliefs and reflect on one's own choices in deliberation and self examination or in interpersonal settings, such as in a discussion with others, seems to rely on good reasoning and self knowledge. It turns out that the psychological studies in the 20th and 21st century threaten not only the idea that humans are rational animals, but also the idea that humans are self knowing animals. For example, on the basis of a wide range of empirical studies, Timothy Wilson provides a not very encouraging portrait of self knowledge, according to which people have limited access to their own personalities, the reasons for their responses, their own feelings, and how they will feel in the future. So, of course, relevant affective forecasting. Zimbardo did research on that. And then we've talked a good deal about We Are What We Do, Timothy D. Wilson's essay in This Explains Everything. And what I love, by the way, about this book, and so I'm so glad that Dr. Schuchtman said that she wanted to hear my thoughts on it because, as you know, we have the Warsaw Illusions, which are, sorry, checking that I'm not peeking. We have the Warsaw Illusions, WERSAS. So R for rationality. These are, by the way, of course, illusions that minds have about the mind. So that was chapter 1, the R. And then self-knowledge, which falls under sense. One of the S's, the other one being storage. Sense that we have pure perception of not only the external world, but our inner world. So it's a subcategory of the sense illusion. Okay, the main aim of this chapter is to examine relevant psychological studies and see whether their results support such a pessimistic portrait of self-knowledge. We start by clarifying the idea that humans are self-knowers, section 2.2, and then examine the implications of relevant psychological studies, section 2.3. These studies threaten some ideas about how and to what extent humans can attain self-knowledge. In particular, the studies seem to threaten the idea that humans have non-observational access to their own minds, which is, I think, incredibly stupid that we've gone so long thinking that cells can, see themselves. We can feel some, our emotions, right? That's kind of what emotions are. But and we can experience some of our thoughts because we are the processors, so we experience some of those processes, but we don't experience all of them. Most of what we think we know about ourselves are just stories that we tell ourselves. And my point is that seems like that's obvious, that we wouldn't. Gosh, it's actually nerve-wracking knowing how many viewers. I can't think straight right now. How do I close that panel? There we go, boom. Okay. Moving on. In particular, the studies seem to threaten the idea that humans have non-observational access to their own minds, i.e., they can know their minds without observing and interpreting their own outward behavior. That just by looking inside, yeah, I'm somebody who blah, 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 blah. Empirical evidence provides numerous and striking examples. No, we're going to put the panel back on. All right. And then we're just going to get used to it. Great. Empirical evidence provides numerous and striking examples of humans actually relying on self-observation or self-interpretation to learn what they are thinking or feeling, figuring out their own minds in the same way they figure out other minds, by observing and interpreting outward behavior. The crucial question is whether self-observation and self-interpretation the crucial question is whether I'm sorry, I'm still getting set up. Okay. The crucial question is whether self observation and self interpretation happens in some cases but not all cases, in which case humans do have some non observational access to their minds, as discussed in section 2.4, or whether it happens in all cases, in which case they completely lack non observational access, as discussed in section 2.5. I will be thrilled if he convinces me that we completely lack non-observational access. But what would that even mean? Because we are the processor or some fraction of the processor at a given moment. The subject is not the entire brain at any given moment, the experiencer. Not all processes are experienced. But surely, so let's say that okay, here's an example. Um, okay, so I was in Spain. It's so unnecessary, this example, but I was in Spain. We're at a restaurant. A guy gets mad at me because of my dog, and I'm telling him, "Don't worry, your dog's, my dog's not going to attack your dog." He gets angry that I'm, disagreeing with him or whatever. And first of all, I can feel myself getting hot. Second of all, I just keep seeing images of like his neck or sort of different sections of his body. Third of all, I am like aware of my hands. And yeah, it just felt like I was trying to figure out where to put my hand. That seems like access to my thoughts. I gotta turn off this auto framing, auto zooming thing. What does this do? This zooms. Group mode. Turn off auto frame. Put it like this. And then go like this. That's good. Alright. But how do I get it to not do that anymore? Alright, let's see. We'll just have to, so it's at 1.3 right now. Okay, good. Okay, so empirical, blah, 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 and interpreting outward behavior. The crucial question for the 20th time is whether self-observation and self-interpretation happens in some cases, but not all cases, in which case humans do have some non-observational access to their minds, as discussed in section 2.4, or whether it happens in all cases, in which case they completely lack non-observational access, as discussed in section 2.5. Other interesting questions intersect with issues about the process humans rely on to attain self-knowledge. Is self-knowledge fallible? Do we know our minds better than an external observer? And to what extent can human agents know their own mind? The empirical evidence has something important to contribute to such questions, too. What else contributes to those questions? I mean, besides our intuitions. This chapter defends a modest view of human self-knowledge. Although human agents are capable of knowing their own minds non-observationally, they rely on the process of self-observation and self-interpretation more frequently than previously acknowledged, which suggests that their knowledge of themselves is not always peculiar or special. Section 2.2, clarifying self-knowledge. Self-knowledge and its targets. Claire hears one of her friends saying, "Claire is so mean. I have known her since high school and she has never bought me a drink, not even on my birthday." Claire always thought of herself as a generous person. Her friend must be wrong. Last night, Jagbir met a handsome man on a roller coaster ride at the local fair when they were asked to share the same two-seater. Now she can't stop thinking about him. Jagbir thinks she has fallen in love with him. Will she be able to find out who he is? Quick, what's that? Misattribution of arousal. So I want to hear it. I don't know. I don't know why I keep getting this bitrate message. Wait, what is this current stream called? Okay, no, not that. Bop bop. Oh, okay. Am I currently in the? Oh, it is. Oh, it is. Okay. All right. So I think we're good. Okay. I mean, it looks good to me. Okay. How do I like? Where can I put this? Right there. All right, there we go. Okay, continuing. Yeah, no, it looks fine to me. The quality looks good to me. Okay. Um, so let's see whether we can try to open our mouths to speak from ourselves only one time per page. Okay. So there's this Jagbir woman. She thinks she's fallen in love with this guy that she sat next to on a roller coaster, but you know and I know that that's misattribution of arousal. It's the excitement of the roller coaster. Claire believes that she is a generous person. Jagbir is convinced that she has fallen in love. But are they right? Are they good self knowers? More generally, how well do humans know themselves? To answer this question, we need to investigate two issues: the philosophical questions about self knowledge, e.g., what does it mean to have self knowledge? And what is necessary for a person to have self knowledge? And what is sufficient for a person to have self knowledge? And the psychological questions about self knowledge. Do humans satisfy a sufficient condition for having self knowledge? Do humans fail to satisfy a necessary condition for having self knowledge? And what do empirical studies say about these issues? We discuss the philosophical questions in this section, which is section 2.2, and move on to the psychological questions in the next, section 2.3. Self-knowledge is knowledge of one's own mind. Here we do not need to commit to a full theory about the nature of knowledge, which is the focus of epistemology. We are only committed to the view that knowledge involves belief, i.e., when X knows that P, then X believes that P. This means that self-knowledge involves beliefs about one's mind. Self-knowledge is knowledge of one's own mind. So I do want to emphasize that point. That doesn't have to be correct. It's just beliefs. Okay, self-knowledge is, but that seems like equivocation, because isn't he going to make the point that we're not very good at self-knowledge? But we're definitely good at having beliefs about ourselves. We're just not good at having accurate beliefs about ourselves. So this seems funny to me. Involves belief. Involves belief, but then I don't know if you're going to be consistent about that. One can know about one's own mental states, such as the desire to eat a cheeseburger or the wish to become an astronaut. One's psychological processes, such as the process of calculating the sum of two numbers. One's psychological capacities, such as the capacity to remember people's names in a list quickly and accurately. One's dispositions, such as the tendency to have paranoid thoughts. One's character traits. One's character traits, such as whether one is generous or mean, one's deep values, such as valuing family more than income, and so on. We cannot assume that all forms of self knowledge are similar and equally good. Perhaps humans have relatively good self knowledge. See? Perhaps humans have relatively good self knowledge of some of the items above, but not others. For example, it is likely that humans have a better grasp of their own beliefs and desires, what Qasim Qassam, 2014, calls trivial self knowledge, than of their own dispositions, character traits, and deep values. Yeah, that makes sense. What Qassam calls substantive self-knowledge, knowing, substantive self-knowledge. So there's trivial self-knowledge and substantive self-knowledge. The trivial one is the beliefs and desires, and the substantive is the dispositions, character traits, and deep values. Great. Knowing one's own beliefs and desires seems to be relatively simple. People just know what they believe and what they want. In contrast, knowing one's own dispositions, character traits, and deep values requires serious investigation, including observation and analysis of one's past and present behavior. Claire is angry with her friend for having described her. Oh, no, this is the same Claire from earlier. Claire is angry with her friend for having described her as a mean person, but did her friend have a point? Claire needs to think about her past behavior. Did she ever buy him a drink? Knowledge of one's own dispositions, character traits, and deep values is typically attained in the same way as knowledge of other people's dispositions, character traits, and deep values, namely by thinking about the past and interpreting the available information. This is the most important thing I've learned, I think we can definitely say so far this year. Okay, so can we sit with this a second? So, I'm thinking about some people in my life. Okay, so we need to include this in the Warsaw Illusions. Is that, well, we'll finish the chapter, but I have to remember this. I have to make a post-it of this. Yeah, trivial self-knowledge. It's still important. But I think it means trivial just because it's easier to know. It's more evident. I don't know. That's our beliefs and our desires. And then there's versus substantive self-knowledge. Which is dispositions. Oh, dude. Oh, great. So I don't know about deep values, but it seems to me that beliefs and desires, not like needs, not compulsions, but like, I want chocolate or I want strawberry ice cream or and maybe you have to be like currently experiencing the desire, like, ooh, I want that man over there, I want that lady over there. Anyway, my point is that just kind of intuitively I'm thinking that beliefs and desires evolved later than dispositions, character traits, and deep values. And then the subject, the experiencer, the one that can kind of know itself and talk about itself. Let's say the verbal self also evolved later, like the beliefs and desires. You know, if desires, this is okay, this is really good. So if desires, some definition of or some form of desires evolved later, it will justify my including free will or will at all really in the Warsaw illusion. So the what I'm talking about is in my list of illusions that minds have about the minds, will, essence, rationality, sense, attention, and storage. Um, one of the will illusions is that we think that all of our behavior emanates from our desires. And I've always, the last few years, I think pretty much as long as I've had the Warsaw illusions, so the last 2 years, have said that I don't think it makes any sense to think that all behavior emanates from will, from desires. I think will and desires evolved after a lot of our behaviors, you know. And I'm starting to, and that's starting to, yeah, okay, interesting. Really cool, really cool. So, what are the types of desires and approximately when did each evolve? What are the types of desires and when did each evolve? Because he's talking about deep values, right? That's a type of desire in a sense. All right, that's really cool. All right, carrying on. Okay. Yeah, that's really cool. Okay. Let me put just a question symbol here. And then hashtag Warsaw. Okay. Um, so knowledge of one's own dispositions, character traits, and deep values is typically attained in the same way as knowledge of other thinking, of other people's dispositions, character traits, and deep values. Namely, by thinking about the past and interpreting the available information. If Claire cannot remember ever buying her friend a drink, then maybe she is not as generous as she thought she was. This said, thanks to the self-serving bias, it's going to be pretty easy to tell yourself a story. Oh yeah, I didn't actually literally go and buy him a drink, but one time he asked for $5 and I didn't say no. I gave him the $5 and then he used that to buy a drink. So I basically bought him a drink. That might not make you generous. It might just be that, you didn't feel like you could say no. And who would, but it doesn't mean that you thought to share with him. And that's more of what generous would be. Again, knowledge of one's psychological processes is not usually available to conscious awareness and thus cannot be introspected. I'm going to circle conscious awareness because he doesn't even talk about consciousness in this book. So if I were ever to speak with him, I would ask him what this sentence means. Jagbeer believes that she has fallen in love with the man from the roller coaster ride, but she may not know what caused her emotional state of arousal during the ride, nor what changed in her body when the emotion took hold. Moreover, it is possible that knowing how her emotional state emerged will reveal that it is not love that she is feeling, but rather a sense of excitement caused by the thrill of the ride that she mistakenly categorized as attraction for the handsome man. As Wilson writes, people possess a powerful, sophisticated, adaptive unconscious that is crucial for survival in the world. Because this Unconscious operates so efficiently out of view, however, and is largely inaccessible. There is a price to pay in self knowledge. We have seen some examples of unconscious reasoning processes in the previous chapter. The heuristics guiding our reasoning processes might not be available to consciousness, although the output of the heuristic processes is usually available. For example, before the studies conducted by Kahneman and Tversky, people may not have been aware of the fact that they relied on the heuristic of representativeness when establishing the probability of events in the Linde experiment, although they were aware of the output of the heuristic process. It is overwhelmingly plausible that human agents do not have introspective access to unconscious cognitive processes of this kind. Knowledge about the heuristic processes that guide human reasoning requires agents to interpret the results of sophisticated psychological experiments. You can't just see it happen. Oh, I'm running the representativeness heuristic. I don't know. I'm going to think about this a lot more. This is giving me this is reinvigorating my curiosity about self-knowledge, reminding me all the questions that, because sometimes, and this could be absolute bullshit, it's hard to articulate, hard to describe, but I feel like I can, or I feel like I am. And of course, maybe it's different because I think about this stuff all the time and I've been trying to notice it. So either because I've been trying to notice it, I have started to imagine it. Very, very possible. I mean, it's 50-50 as far as I know. Or the other 50% that maybe connections are forming where I'm able to notice some heuristics because I can't even articulate why I'm really saying that, so never mind. Self-knowledge. Privileged and peculiar. Self-knowledge is a form of knowledge, but philosophers tend to assume that self-knowledge is not just an example of knowledge among others. There is something special or distinctive about it. As we will see, the crucial issue in this chapter is whether self-knowledge is really special or distinctive. In what sense would self-knowledge be special or distinctive? The following example from Alex Byrne is helpful. Consider Jim, sitting in his office cubicle. Jim believes that his pen looks black to him, that he wants a cup of tea, that he feels a dull pain in his knee, that he intends to answer all his emails today, that he is thinking about paper clips, that he believes that it is raining. Jim also has various equally humdrum beliefs about his environment, that it is raining, that his pen is black, and so on. Furthermore, he has some opinions about the psychology of his office mate, Pam. He believes that her pen looks green to her, that she wants a cup of coffee, that her elbow feels itchy, that she is thinking about him, that she believes that it is raining. Among the three groups of beliefs in this example, one might think that the first group, Jim's beliefs about his own mind, is more epistemically privileged than the other two groups, Jim's beliefs about the environment and Jim's beliefs about Pam's mind. Nope. The notion of being epistemically privileged can be understood in multiple ways. Epistemically privileged can mean more reliable, more likely to be true, more likely to be knowledge, and so on. In any case, the basic idea is clear enough. It is relatively easy to imagine that Jim's belief that it is raining is false. Perhaps it was raining 1 hour ago when Jim looked out of the window. He still believes that it is raining 1 hour later, but it stopped raining and he did not realize. Again, it is not difficult to imagine that Jim's belief, again, it is not difficult to imagine that Jim's belief about that Pam wants a cup of coffee is false. Perhaps Jim mistakenly assumes that all his coworkers, including Pam, are coffee lovers, but Pam prefers tea to coffee. In contrast, it's relatively difficult to imagine how Jim's belief that he believes that it is raining is false. You're saying I'm wrong that I believe that it's raining? Could have sworn I believed it was raining. Or I could have sworn I currently believe it's raining. Or how his belief that he wants a cup of tea is false. When Jim fails to notice that it has stopped raining, his belief that it is raining, his belief about the environment, is false. However, his belief that he believes that it is raining, his belief about his own belief, is true. Again, when Jim fails to notice Pam's preference for coffee, his belief that Pam wants tea, his belief about Pam, is false. However, Jim's belief that he wants a cup of tea, his belief about his own desire, is true. Epistemic privilege is one aspect in which self-knowledge is said to be special and distinctive. There is another aspect in which self-knowledge is said to be special and distinctive. Self-knowledge is thought to be acquired by a peculiar process that is different in kind from the process of knowing about the environment or about other minds. For example, Jim's belief that he believes that it is raining is acquired by a peculiar process that is different in kind from the process of Jim acquiring the belief that it is raining or the belief that Pam believes that it is raining. The peculiar process is only available to Jim when he tries to know about his own mind, or to Pam when she tries to know about her own mind. The process is not available to Jim when he tries to know Pam's mind, nor to Pam when she tries to know Jim's mind. I'm surprised that that's the point being made. I'm definitely missing something here. I'm not understanding something. Yeah, because I thought it was weird that he stressed when he tries to know about his own mind. I thought all that mattered was that it's only, no, it's like the way that it's available to him. That's what I thought. The peculiarity of the process by which self-knowledge can be acquired has been described in different ways, such as introspective, direct, non-inferential, authoritative, or a priori. See box 2A for some clarification of the meanings of these terms. This peculiarity by which one acquires knowledge of one's own mental states is the second aspect in which self-knowledge is said to be special and distinctive. We haven't really specified by which, but okay, very good. So number one, of why it's special or distinctive. And then number two. Number one is that it's supposedly epistemically privileged. And number two is that it's peculiar. Okay. What does it mean to say that self-knowledge is peculiar? Okay, great. What is the difference in kind between Jim's access to the contents of his own mind and his access to the contents of other minds or his access to the environment? Fully answering this question requires a discussion of how knowledge of other minds is acquired. This is the topic of Chapter 8, in which we discuss the nature of mind reading, i.e., the process of attributing mental states to others. For now, it can be understood in the following way. Our access to others' minds is similar to our access to the non-psychological aspects of our environment. Jim knows that his pen is black by seeing it. Pam could know the same thing by the same method. Likewise, what voice did I can never keep track of the voices. I mean, even when I'm doing the voice, I can't keep track of the voice. Keep it every 2 minutes. Oh, literally every 2 minutes. I'm getting a bitrate problem. It just seems weird. I don't know. Likewise, Jim knows that Pam wants a coffee by observing her behavior. Anyone else, including Pam, could know the same thing by the same method. Our peculiar access to our own minds is not like this. One can come to know that one wants a coffee without observing oneself at all. We're in the weeds now, bro, because I'm not sure I agree with what Byrne has said in 2018 here. Because I'm thinking it depends on what you mean by I know I want a cup of coffee. So if let's say I'm at my desk, I'm in Scranton, I'm in the office, I'm working. And the image and the concept of a cup of coffee pops into my mind. So I probably wouldn't, but I could pause right there, observe that this has just happened, and then conclude, come to believe, oh, I must want a cup of coffee. I probably wouldn't do that. But I could, and in that case, it would still be observing. Alternatively, concept, maybe the image, where it is, and I just start to get up and go over there. Now, would you say that in that case, I know that I want coffee? I'm certainly acting on the desire that I want coffee. But I'm not sure. I think it's useful to distinguish somehow between acting as though I know I want coffee by, acting according to that desire, and then sort of having observed that desire and noticed that I want coffee. So the question is there I gotta put up my language. Is there a diff between acting on desire and noticing desire? But when I phrase it like that, well, the answer is yes. So I don't know. I'm going to put that I disagree with that. Definitely something worth talking about and thinking about. And this would be really fun to talk about with Dr. Schuckman. The idea is that peculiar. Oh, no. So now that we've taken a pause, let's so introspection. Now let's read this. Let's read this page. Let's look at the key terms in the philosophical literature on self-knowledge. Okay. So first we have introspection, which translates to looking inward or looking within. And introspection is one way of learning about one's own mind. I think you could translate introspection as telling yourself a fucking story. But ideally, theoretically, or how it's defined is that it's a way of learning about one's own mind by simply realizing what one's own thoughts and feelings are. Well, this relates to. All right, well, this relates to this here. Okay. For example, Svati knows that she is feeling sad by introspection. If all it takes for her to know about her sadness is to turn her attention to how she is feeling. So she just observed. Okay, so these things definitely disagree. For her to know, she has to turn her attention. So then this and this, these things disagree. Okay. A priori knowledge. A priori knowledge is knowledge that can be attained independently of any experience that justifies the knowledge. So you didn't get the knowledge from anywhere, you just have it. For example, Swati knows a priori that 2 plus 2 equals 4, or that all bachelors are unmarried without relying on observation or induction. Okay. So it's okay if she had to do the math one day early in her life. I don't get how that's a priori, bro. That's interesting. I definitely need to learn more about that. Ever since the very first time I ever heard about a priori, I was like, bullshit. So there is a priori knowledge in the sense of like infants can swim. A priori, we know gravity. That's all pre-programmed. Um, and then a lot of a priori knowledge that philosophers have depended on in the past has been, for me, just bullshit intuitions or pre-programmed stuff that isn't actually true. Um, like knowing that the self is real or something. Gosh, I'm surprised by this example. I'm a little bit stuck on this. Svati knows a priori that 2 plus 2 equals 4. Yeah, I gotta ask ChatGPT about this. Um, oh, excuse me. Where am I typing right now? Did I just change anything? Um, so, well, gosh, not sure really where to put this right now. I guess I'll just put it in streaming. It does not belong in streaming. Um, how does 2 plus 2 equals 4 count as a priori knowledge? Now, my answer, before I see hers, is going to be that 2 plus 2 equals 4 counts as a priori knowledge because the concept of 2 is pre-programmed, the concept of 2 is pre-programmed, the concept of addition is pre-programmed. And so, although she might not be pre-programmed with 2 plus 2 equals 4, she doesn't need any additional external information to come to that conclusion. She can see 2 apples, someone gives her another two apples, and she can go, look, I've got four apples. Or not even with counting it. Yeah, she can be told, you had two apples, then you got another two apples. Now how many do you have? I don't know actually. How does 2 plus 2 equals 4 count as a priori knowledge? So, right. To know it, you don't need to count physical objects. Okay, so ignore what I said about people giving her apples. You only need to understand the rules slash meanings of the symbols or the rules of arithmetic and then follow them. If we treat arithmetic as a formal system, then 2 plus and 4 are governed by rules, axioms, definitions. Once you've got those rules, so I wasn't understanding that I just don't know what a priori is. So I'm rereading. So a priori means you can justify the claim. So it's not about how you get the claim. It's about being able to justify it, which is definitely what he said as well, but I just glossed over it. So it's, oh, because it's still being attained. Okay. Okay. A priori knowledge is knowledge that can be attained independently of any experience that justifies the knowledge. So does a priori kind of just mean self-evident? So, okay, here's the main philosophical wrinkle. People disagree about why it's a priori. On some accounts, it's true. It's so 2 plus 2 equals 4 because of the meaning slash definitions involved, or because it follows from the axioms that fix those meanings. Great. But then there's the Kantish view, Kant's view. It's not just definitions, but it's still knowable independently of experience because it reflects the structure of how we must represent quantity slash number. Okay, that sings for sure. I'm also thinking that I guess I don't feel. I guess because I'm realizing I didn't. A priori isn't what I thought it was, but I think that my understanding was close enough that my angst in college philosophy classes was justified because you have all these philosophers talking about all this shit they know a priori, and I'm like, you can't know much of anything without being empirical and going out and studying the world. Especially all those philosophers that, and just guys, isn't it amazing? You go to a philosophy class in college in the 21st century, and they're telling you about what pre scientific philosophers thought the self was. Surely there are more relevant, more valuable, more constructive questions that pre scientific philosophers treated, where you can see not only how philosophers functioned, but also learn something from it about the question that they were treating. That is not the case for the self. I don't, I'm going to make a bold claim here. So pre scientific philosophers contributed, gave us maybe some useful vocabulary and definitions, but not true ones. I'm going to make a bold claim and say that pre scientific philosophers contributed nothing. I think I'm going to go through with it to questions of the mind and self. I'm sticking with it. Okay, and then Quine and the empiricists argue that even math is ultimately revisable in light of experience. So a priori is something that you don't need sensory evidence to justify. Okay, bro. Okay, bro. course, I see. This armchair from the armchair. So its warrant is from the armchair, not from empirical testing. All right, I did not understand a priori that way or correctly. Okay. All right, very good. Okay. All right, next, direct, or also called non inferential self knowledge, is knowledge that can be attained by being aware of one's own mental state without becoming aware of anything else. It is often called knowledge by acquaintance. So, direct self knowledge is knowledge that can be attained by being aware of one's own mental state without becoming aware of anything else. Direct self knowledge is knowledge that can be attained by being aware of one's own mental state. Okay, for example, Svati knows that she feels sad directly because her feeling of sadness is something she introspects. But what about something she experiences? What the fuck? How is introspection non inferential? Because it's direct observation. Introspecting the feelings requires no inferential process. For example, Svati knows that that she feels sad. Svati knows that she feels sad directly. And I think this is kind of the crux of the questions of the issues. So I think we should probably return to this. All right, first person authority is the idea that one is more authoritative about the content of one's own mind than about the contents of other people's minds. For example, Svati's friends do not challenge her assertion that she feels sad because they assume that she is the expert when it comes to the contents of her own mind, as they are all experts about the contents of their own minds when they attribute mental states to themselves. Short. Privileged access. What's the difference between that and first person authority? Privileged access is the idea that one's judgment about one's own mental state is more likely to be true or more likely to be knowledge than one's judgment about other issues. There's definitely an equivocation here. So, for example, when Svati judges that she is sad, that judgment is more likely to be true, i.e., she is in fact sad, or more likely to be knowledge, i.e., she knows that she is sad. Oh. Again, for example, when Svati judges that she is sad, that judgment is more likely to be true, i.e., she is in fact sad, or more likely to be knowledge, i.e., she knows that she is sad, aka believes that she is sad. I added the aka believes that she is sad. Then her judgment that one of her friends is sad, or that it is raining outside. Peculiar access is the idea that one can appeal to a peculiar and special method to acquire self-knowledge. For example, Svati appeals to a peculiar and special method when she judges that she is sad. Others cannot appeal to this method when they judge that she is sad. Still just like a super mysterious method. Alright. So the problem with this schedule of sort of winding up, waking up, go chilling, doing some errands, what have you, before I get to work, is that it's been a long time since I had food, because I can't eat before I do work or else I lose my motivation. But now I'm starting to feel lightheaded. Alright. Anyway, so back to page 53. So on page 51, the text is interrupted. So this is the previous page. We talk about knowledge of other minds, how it's acquired. For now, and which will be discussed in more detail in chapter 8, but for now, it can be understood in the following way. And that's when we read the thing. Our access to others' minds is similar to our access to the non-psychological aspects of our environment. Jim knows that his pen is black by seeing it. Pam can know the same thing by the same method. Likewise, Jim knows that Pam wants a coffee by observing her behavior. Anyone else, including Pam, could know the same thing by the same method. Our peculiar access to our own minds is not like this. One can come to know that one wants a coffee without observing oneself at all. The idea is that peculiarity has something to do with observation or the lack thereof. Jim's knowledge of his environment and of Pam's mental states is observational or interpretive. His knowledge of the pen depends on the observation of the pen and its properties. And his knowledge of Pam's mental states depends on him observing and interpreting her behavior. If Pam answers, "Coffee, please," to the question, "Would you like something to drink?" Jim can observe this exchange and conclude that she wants a cup of coffee. In contrast, Jim does not need any observation of his own behavior. I just realized something. I would not want to watch a video if the person were looking directly at me. Most of the content that I consume, whether that's TV, movies, or YouTube, yeah, it's going to be mostly watching people without feeling like they're looking at me. I think that that's how I want my channel to be. So, okay. All right. So then who am I talking to? I want to be able to look at somebody. Well, we've got this guy here, which is probably our best bet. Fuck. Oh, thank God. That drawer was open. Um, so would I be able to think and talk like this? I could. Oh, like this. I could. Yeah. Yeah, I could. What do you think? What do you guys think? That could be pretty good. The other option, the other option, Francis, says Francis. I've had this since high school. The other option is that we train their animals to take turns sitting next to me. This is gonna take some getting used to, but maybe I could do it. Could you sit somewhere? Huh. Alright, well, it's definitely an idea. And then, of course, I can just be looking down as well. Alright, very good. Okay, so Jim does not need any observation of his, in contrast, Jim does not need any observation of his own behavior to know that he believes that it is raining or that he wants a cup of tea. The fact that there is no need for observation or interpretation, inference, is what makes self-knowledge peculiar. Note that this does not imply that Jim cannot know his mental states by observing his behavior. It is obvious that Jim, if he wants to, can gain knowledge of his mental states by observing his behavior. The point is that he does not have to observe his behavior to know his own mental states. Observation and interpretation are not necessary. To sum up, our answer to the philosophical questions about self-knowledge is that self-knowledge is knowledge, a form of belief, of one's own mind and of its constituents, such as one's own mental states, processes, dispositions, character traits, and so on. Self-knowledge seems to be special and distinct in the sense that, first, it is epistemically privileged in comparison to other forms of knowledge, and second, it is acquired through a peculiar and non-observational process. Section 2.3, Challenges to Peculiarity. Peculiarity and parity. Let us move on to the psychological questions about self-knowledge. How well do humans know their own minds according to psychological inputs? Do they really have privileged access? How about peculiar access? The psychological studies we will see below could threaten ideas of self-knowledge, both as privileged and as peculiar. We will outline some issues concerning self-knowledge as privileged, but our main focus will be peculiarity. Several researchers in psychology and philosophy are skeptical about the peculiarity thesis of self-knowledge for empirical reasons. And then a bunch of people cited, including Alison Gopnik and Timothy Wilson. These researchers emphasize the similarity rather than the difference between self knowledge and knowledge of other minds. In other words, their emphasis is not on the peculiarity of self knowledge, but rather on the parity between self knowledge and knowledge of other minds. Individuals come to know their own attitudes, emotions, and other internal states partially by inferring them from observations of their own overt behavior and or the circumstances in which this behavior occurs. Thus, to the extent that internal cues are weak, ambiguous, or uninterpretable, the individual is functionally in the same position as an outside observer, an observer who must necessarily rely upon these same external cues to infer the individual's inner states. That's Bem in 1972. The system that is employed when one identifies and attributes mental states to oneself is none other than the mind reading system that underlies one's capacity to attribute mental states to other people. In order to attribute thoughts to oneself, then, the mind reading faculty is forced to interpret the available sensory evidence. This can concern one's physical circumstances and overt behavior, or it can involve one's own visual imagery, affective feelings, and inner speech. The result is that all access to one's own propositional attitudes is sensory based and interpretive in nature. Yeah, so I would agree. That sings for me. The other one does as well, less so, and but okay, great. But should we deny the idea of peculiar self knowledge? Is it really true that self knowledge is observational and interpretive, just like knowledge of other minds? We divide this question into two sub questions. The first sub-question is whether self-knowledge is observational and interpretive in at least some cases. The second sub-question is whether self-knowledge is observational and interpretive in all cases. Still getting these warnings every 2 minutes. Huh. Why? Huh. If the answer to the first question is no, which implies a no answer to the second sub-question, then the idea of peculiar self-knowledge is unscathed. Sorry, I should repeat the questions. So, the overarching question is it true that self-knowledge is observational and interpretive just like knowledge of other minds? So the first sub-question is it ever observational and interpretive? And if you say, no, it is never observational interpretive, you have full self-knowledge just by being yourself. Okay. So if you answer if the answer to the first sub-question is no, then the idea of peculiar self-knowledge is unscathed. We call this the extreme peculiarity view. If, in contrast, the answer to the second sub-question is yes, which implies a yes answer to the first sub-question, then the idea of peculiar self-knowledge is denied completely. Right, okay, it said the second one first, gotcha. We call this the extreme parity view. Peter Carruthers, for example, defends this extreme position according to which we have no peculiar self-knowledge of our own propositional attitudes and decisions. There is just a single faculty involved in both forms of activity. Knowing one's own mental states and knowing somebody else's, using essentially the same inputs, which are all perceptual or quasi-perceptual in character. Oh, this is the same guy that said the other thing? Okay, I guess it depends on how generous you're going to be with that quasi-perceptual. If the answers are yes to the first sub-question and no to the second sub-question, the idea of peculiar self-knowledge is partially challenged, but not completely denied. Peculiar self-knowledge can occur. It is just that it is not as widespread as we might assume. We call this the moderate view. Daryl Bem seems to be the defender of the moderate view. In the quote above, he says that we know our mental states partially by inferring them from observations of our own overt behavior and or the circumstances in which this behavior occurs. And this happens not always, but rather when internal cues are weak, ambiguous, or uninterpretable. Thus, we have three positions: the extreme peculiarity view, the extreme parity view, and the moderate view. Our main task below is to see which view is the one that the empirical evidence recommends. I'm going to go moderate, I think. So I'm going to lean. No, I'm going to. What? So it's definitely, you know what? I think I got confused and I was thinking that the extreme peculiarity view is like the same as that the experience that we have leads to true self-knowledge. It does not. But what that's great. So I don't know. I'm gonna think about that for sure. I can't I'm gonna I gotta yeah. Wonder what the I wonder what an adjective actually maybe I already know it, I'm just not realizing that that's the adjective. Oh, right, the French word bye. Okay, that's good. So I think that currently I don't know what I think, which seems to fly in the face of the extreme peculiar view, doesn't it? Because I am thinking, surely I'm thinking things about it and I'm processing. No, no, no. I'm just saying I don't know what I think because, yeah, it's not slapping words, maybe because there's competition between my different thoughts. Okay, so maybe knowing that can help us. So why? So I can ask myself this question: Why would I believe that about the peculiar thing? That it's why would I accept the extreme peculiarity view? Isn't that amazing that we're having these debates, even though like we are minds? So shouldn't we be able to? This is as minds. Why is as minds? Why is it so unclear to us how we experience ourselves? And does that give us an answer? I'll have no idea what that means when I read that next. In fact, I'm not sure I know what that means now. Does that give us an answer? Okay, extreme peculiarity, moderate view, or extreme parity view. Okay, let me make sure I understand this. So, all right, so without looking at anything, so the extreme peculiarity view is that there is something, I'm just quoting right now, is that there is something special and distinct about the method by which I I know my let's take desires for now. Carruthers says that there's nothing special, but then goes on to mention our access to inner speech. Doesn't that make it special? And that's definitely something I'm getting tripped up on. What did he say? So, in order to attribute thoughts to oneself, the mind reading faculty is forced to interpret the available sensory evidence. This can concern one's physical circumstances and overt behavior, which other people will have access to, so definitely no special method. Or it can involve one's own visual imagery, affective feelings, and inner speech. The result is that all access to one's own propositional attitudes is sensory based and interpretive in nature. That's starting to sing less and less for me. So, but we don't have to draw any conclusions because that's just to some it's that's singing less. And I don't have to answer the question. I don't have to choose whether I lean more toward the extreme peculiarity or extreme parity. But I just want to make sure I can. I want to no. I want to say sort of where my thoughts are now, and I think want to make sure that I can articulate this at all. So I there's definitely aspects of the extreme parity peculiarity view that sing. I do feel like I have special access to my thoughts. Now, I don't know which of my thoughts about my thoughts, which of my experiences of myself are true and false, but how I come to have these beliefs about myself. There are aspects that feel special, and I think that lines up nicely with my assumption or my belief that I don't know actually. No, yeah, that lines up nicely with my belief that I am the brain. That it's not like I'm a soul that has to look at my behavior to see what my brain is doing. So I am experiencing some of my own processing. All right, that's good. Yeah, I think, yeah, I guess I'm gonna go moderate just because I think there are definitely aspects of my access to myself that are peculiar, and I definitely think there's more parity. So, and then the moderate view, okay. So, peculiar self knowledge can occur. It's just that it is not as widespread as we might assume. We call this the moderate view. All right, I'll go moderate. I'm moderate, but this is one of the most interesting questions. Um, well, it's the most interesting one I've had in the last 9 days, so of the year so far. Huh. Okay, so thus we have three positions: the extreme peculiarity view, the extreme parity view, and the moderate view. Our main task below is to see which view is the one that the empirical evidence recommends. But I don't even feel like we've addressed the philosophical issues, the definitions and stuff enough, but okay. Dissonance studies. Let us start by looking at what BEM takes to be the evidence for self-observation. Instances of cognitive dissonance. In a classic study by Leon Festinger and James Carl Smith, 1959, participants in one condition, the $1 condition, performed repetitive and boring tasks for 1 hour. Then they received $1 compensation for playing a role which involved the job of telling the next person who was waiting for her turn that the tasks were fun and enjoyable. Participants in another condition, the $20 condition, performed the same tasks for the same time. They received $20 compensation for playing the role and telling the next person that the tasks were fun and enjoyable. The remaining participants were in a control group and received no monetary compensation. Afterwards, all participants Afterwards, all participants indicated how much they enjoyed the tasks. The result was that those in the $1 condition rated the tasks significantly more enjoyable than those in the $20 condition. BEM argues that this experimental result is explained by the idea of self-observation in a fairly straightforward manner. To see how BEM's idea works, consider the following case. Let us think about a participant in the $1 condition, Sally, and another in the $20 condition, Christopher. You observe Sally's and Christopher's behavior and try to figure out how much they enjoyed the tasks. You observe two facts about Sally's behavior. A1. She told the next person that the tasks were fun and that she received only $1 compensation. Oh, and B1, that she received only $1 compensation. Okay. So you saw her tell, hey, yeah, that was a lot of fun, really enjoyable. And, you know, she got $1. Okay. On the basis of this pair of observations, you conclude that Sally enjoyed the tasks a lot. You think Sally told somebody else that the tasks were fun despite only receiving $1 compensation. So the tasks must be really fun. Next, you observe two facts about Christopher's behavior. He told the next person that the tasks were fun, A20, and he received $20 as compensation, B20. So A1, B1, A20, B20. On the basis of this pair of observations, you conclude that Christopher did not enjoy the task very much. You think Christopher told somebody else that the tasks were fun, but he obviously did so for the money. So was it compensation for the task or for telling someone that? Okay. Yeah, they compensated for telling. Okay, great. I'm totally with you. Very good. Excellent. So, on the basis of this pair of observations, you conclude that Christopher did not enjoy the tasks very much. You think Christopher told somebody else that the tasks were fun, but he obviously did so for the money. Now, think about Sally and Christopher themselves. According to Bem's self-perception theory, Sally and Christopher do not have peculiar access to how much they enjoyed the task. So I'm convinced by this so far. Thus, they need to figure out how they felt about the task by observing their own behavior, just like you do when you assess how much they enjoyed the tasks. Sally observes two facts about her own behavior, A1 and B1. Which one is which again? I told someone that the tests were enjoyable, and I got $1 for doing that. I must have really believed it, because that's not worth $1. Okay. So Sally observes two facts about her own behavior, A1 and B1. Based on this pair of observations, Sally concludes that she enjoyed the tasks a lot. Next, Christopher observes two facts about his own behavior, A20 and B20. Told someone the tests were really fun, and I got $20 for it. But how do you know one way or the other? I mean, I get how Sally feels like she knows, but I don't get how anybody feels like they know in the case of Christopher. So he'd be more of a maybe, right? So based on this pair of observations, Christopher concludes that he did not enjoy the tasks. But for me, I feel like it should be a maybe. Thus, Bem's self-perception theory nicely predicts and explains Festinger and Carl Smith's result. If Bem is correct, then this experiment supports the idea of self-observation. But how plausible is Bem's account of Festinger and Carl Smith's experiment? Bem's theory is presented as an alternative to Festinger's own account. According to Festinger's cognitive dissonance theory, the experimental result is explained by the... Why are you sleeping in the bathroom? Oh, I don't want to wake him. He's starting to make his sleep noises. According to Festinger's cognitive dissonance theory, the experimental result is explained by the motivation for reducing dissonant ideas rather than the process of self-observation. So far, I'm like, nah, Bem. Festinger explained his experiment correctly. In the $1 condition, Sally, so this is going to be Festinger's explanation of the results of his experiment. In the $1 condition, Sally is aware of three facts. I told the next person that the tasks were fine, A1. I only got $1 as compensation, B1. The tasks were boring, C1. A1, B1, and C1 are dissonant in the sense that they do not fit together well. Sally might be thinking, if the tasks are boring, why did I tell the next person that the tasks were fun? For $1? So Motivated to dissolve the dissonance, creating a feeling of discomfort, Sally revises her belief about C1, which is arguably the easiest observation to revise, because she can't say, hey, I didn't get $1. In fact, I got $1,000. Or, hey, I didn't tell someone I really enjoyed them. I licked their asshole. So she comes to believe that the tasks were actually fun because she rejects C1, which was that the tasks were boring. That was the easiest one to deny. The same thing does not happen in the $20 condition. Christopher is aware of 3 facts: that he told the next person that the tasks were fun, A20, that he received $20 as compensation, B20, and that the tasks were boring, C20. Christopher's observations are not dissonant. It is coherent to believe that one receives a high compensation for being asked to perform a boring task and to lie to other participants. Christopher does not need to revise his belief about C20 to eliminate a feeling of discomfort due to dissonance. Note that Festinger's account is not committed to the idea of self-observation. In fact, his account seems to presuppose that Sally and Christopher have non-observational access to how much they enjoyed the tasks. C1, C20. Oh, it was boring. Oh, it was boring. Otherwise, Sally cannot be aware of C1, which is dissonant with A1 and B1. So if he thinks she's aware of C1, then he is saying that she has some peculiar access to her mental state. Damn it. How do I get it to... Oh, I gotta turn off gestures. How do I do that? Beauty? No. Stop it. No. Turn... What does that look like? No. Turn that off. Don't know how to turn off gestures. Oh, more? Auto framing. Enter, exit, auto frame. Wow, that's what I've been doing. That's so funny. Okay, great. So, thus, we have 2 accounts of Festinger and Carl Smith's experiment. Bem's self-perception account, which supports the idea of self-observation. I'm going to put a fat yod through that. Oh, sorry. Bem's self-perception account, which supports the idea of self-observation, and Festinger's cognitive dissonance account, which does not support the idea of self-observation. Which is more plausible? Answering this question is not easy because the 2 theories predict the same results in many scenarios. In other words, many scenarios, just like the one in Festinger and Carl Smith's study, can be adequately explained by either of the 2 theories. But only the cognitive dissonance theory predicts that affective or motivational factors, e.g. the feeling of discomfort, are involved in dissonant cases. And this hypothesis seems to be supported by further studies. In any case, we will not pursue the debate between the cognitive dissonance theory and the self-perception theory here. It is sufficient to say at this point that it is not obvious that Bem's self-perception account is the best explanation of dissonance cases. Confabulation studies. And I mean, this makes it as clear as day, don't it, though? Let us now move on to another body of research relevant to the investigation of self-knowledge, the literature on broad confabulation. In this context, confabulation means making up a story without intending to deceive. It has been defined as an ill-grounded claim people make when they do not realize that their claim is ill-grounded, or as an unsubstantiated claim people make in response to a question that they cannot answer because the relevant information is not known or accessible to them. For a different understanding of confabulation, where confabulation is a symptom of disorders characterized by severe memory impairments, which is called narrow confabulation, see Chapter 7. The cases of confabulation that we will consider here are those where agents offer an inaccurate explanation of their own behavior. See the examples in box 2b. For example, I haven't gotten box 2B yet, but it looks like he's giving us an example already. For example, when asked why one made a decision, one might answer by offering an explanation that does not reflect the actual process behind the decision. Suppose you ask Carl why he chose to watch the film Casablanca, and he says that he wanted to see a classic film starring Humphrey Bogart when in fact, his choice was due to the fact that on the way home from work, he had seen a poster advertising Morocco as a fun holiday destination, and that primed him to select a film that was set in that country. Carl has not lied to you. He is convinced that he is providing an accurate explanation for his choice of film. All right, let's see. Let's look at. Hold on a second. All right, let's look at box 2B. Some contexts in which people confabulate. Okay. There's three contexts. Consumer choice. People offer explanations for their consumer preferences that do not match the most likely causal processes leading to their choices and do not include causally relevant factors. For example, one might choose a product due to an advertisement having made that product salient to them, but explain their choice in terms of the product having some qualities that the alternatives do not have. See the stockings experiment that Nisbet and Wilson did in 1977, which will be reviewed in this section. Attitude explanation. People offer explanations for their attitudes, aesthetic or moral judgments, political attitudes, etc., that are unlikely to reflect the most salient factors contributing to having those attitudes. For example, people in a romantic relationship asked to evaluate their relationship after receiving some negative information about their partner do not realize that their subsequent negative evaluation is largely determined by receiving the negative information. Wilson and Kraft. Hypnosis. People under hypnosis tend to explain their actions without acknowledging the role of the hypnotic suggestion on their behavior. For example, after receiving the hypnotic suggestion that they will see a stranger in the mirror, people under hypnosis claim that the image they see in the mirror is not theirs and explain this by finding physical differences between themselves and the image. No, but look, the eye color is different. Okay, great. Box 2B, done. So, confabulation fits nicely with the idea that humans lack peculiar access to their own minds. If, for example, Carl lacks peculiar access to the real cause of his choice of film, Casablanca, namely the priming effect, he saw an advertisement for Morocco, then he needs to consider observational inputs to figure out why he made that choice. He eventually reaches the reasonable but false conclusion that he wanted to watch a classic film starring Humphrey Bogart. How often do such confabulations happen? Is self-knowledge always confabulatory? Or is it only sometimes confabulatory? So I guess I'll go sometimes. I think I'd go usually. But or actually I wouldn't go anything. I would say it depends on what you're talking about. Because with that sweet ass, what did we do with that? Post it. Anyway, for the trivial beliefs, the trivial self-knowledge, here it is. Trivial self-knowledge, which are your beliefs and your desires, that, oh, well, we're talking about a desire right now. Wait, trivial self-knowledge is, wait, what was said about trivial, oh my gosh. Hold on, let me not look. Well, I'm not on the page yet. Trivial self-knowledge is stuff that we're more likely to know. And then substantive self-knowledge requires, that we're more likely to sort of know directly, implicitly, peculiarly, whatever. Where substantive self-knowledge is more likely to require like observation, all that stuff. Okie dokie. Okay, so I should put the page number. Where is this? Ah, here it is. Page 48. Top 48. All right. Okay. Very good. Um, so confabulation studies can be divided into two groups. The first group of studies involves confabulation in unusual circumstances. The most notable example is the study by Michael Gazzaniga. It says 2000 here, but I'm pretty sure he did this stuff in like the 60s. And then but they're just citing when he wrote about it, published in 2000. So Michael Gazzaniga observed confabulations among so-called split brain patients. In split brain cases, I'm not super confident that the confabulation stuff goes back to the 60s. Maybe it's just doing the split brain experiments and seeing something weird. Let's say confabulation studies 1960s. Here, the history of confabulation. So, first described in the late 1800s. No. Okay, yeah, this is right. Hmm. Doesn't matter. We're moving on. Couldn't find it quickly enough. So in split brain cases, the corpus callosum, a bundle of fibers connecting the right hemisphere and the left hemisphere of the brain, is severed. As a method, well, I've already severed the corpus callosum, so that's good. Um, is a method as a method of treating severe epilepsy. Okay, so I mean, I guess that's the corpus callosum. Yeah. Oh, and then the fornix would be like that. Okay, so that dark pink there. Okay. So Gazzaniga's split brain patient confabulated about the movement of his left hand. The left hand is controlled in the right hemisphere of the brain. The verbal center of the brain is in the left hemisphere. With the corpus callosum severed, the verbal center in the left hemisphere loses access to the right hemisphere, which is responsible for the left hand. Thus, the patient, or the patient's left hemisphere, makes up a false story when asked to explain the reason why the left hand does what it does. The split brain case provides good evidence that agents attain knowledge of themselves, e.g., of the reasons for their current or past behavior, based on self observation and self interpretation. It is likely that what they do when asked for information they do not have is simply interpret their own behavior as they would interpret the behavior of another agent. Or just run a simulation, bro. You don't have to actually even look at. Oh, and then you're running a simulation to have. Never mind. It is likely that when they do is likely that what they do when asked for information they do not have is simply interpret their own behavior as they would interpret the behavior of another agent. But there are obvious limitations to these studies. One problem is that the relevant cases I was looking at the wrong page. Is that the relevant cases are relatively rare, which makes it difficult to conduct reliable, large-scale empirical studies. Another problem is that it is far from obvious that the finding about these unusual cases can be generalized to more common, everyday cases of self knowledge. The confabulations in these special cases do not tell us much about how self knowledge works in general. The second group of studies investigates confabulation in everyday cases. I gotta go faster. I'm getting tired. I'm getting hungry. 2 hours. I can't go another 2 hours. I don't even think I'm halfway through. All right, here we go. The second group of studies investigates confabulation in everyday cases and is more relevant to our discussion about the peculiar nature of self-knowledge. We will now discuss two classic studies of this kind: the Stockings experiment and choice blindness. First, the Stockings experiment. In their landmark paper, Telling More Than We Can Know, Verbal Reports on Mental Processes, Richard Nisbett, Timothy Wilson in 1977 describe an experiment disguised as a consumer survey conducted in a bargain store just outside of Ann Arbor, Michigan. Participants were asked to evaluate the quality of 4 pairs of nylon stockings, A, B, C, and D, from left to right, and indicate which pair was the best. The result revealed a strong position effect on the choices by the participants. D was frequently chosen. So A was chosen at 12%, B at 17%, C 31%, D 40%. Participants' choice was based on the position, not the quality of the pair of stockings. In fact, all pairs of stockings were exactly the same. There was no difference in quality. However, when asked the reason for their choice, participants did not acknowledge the position effect. However, when asked the reason for their choice, participants did not acknowledge the position effect. Instead, they confabulated and spoke about some qualities of their chosen pair of stockings being the main reason for their choice, such as, "Oh, I chose this pair of stockings because its knit is superior." When the experimenter explicitly asked participants about the relevance of the position, participants adamantly denied the idea. Choice blindness. More recently, Peter Johansson and his colleagues in Lund performed a series of experiments. Wait, where is that again? Germany? No. Peter Johansson. So it was like Sweden or something? Lund. Forgot where Lund is. Yeah, Sweden. Okay. So more recently, Peter Johansson and his colleagues in Lund performed a series of experiments that show a different type of confabulation at play. The original study by Johansson and colleagues is inspired by the Stockings experiment by Nisbett and Wilson, but features two important differences. Okay? God damn it. Two important differences. First, participants in this experiment chose from a range of non-identical items. The items were photos of the faces of female strangers. Photo A, photo B. And participants had to choose which one they found most attractive. Second, this study involves a deceptive manipulation. Deceptive manipulation. After participants made their choice and before they could be asked about the reason for it, the photos were swapped. Unbeknown to the participants, the experimenter swapped the photo that had been chosen by the participants, say photo A, with one that had not been chosen, say photo B. Next, the experimenter asked the participants why they chose photo B, pretending that no swapping had taken place. The surprising result of the experiment was that no more than 26% of the photo swaps were noticed by participants, who we could say were choice blind. 74% of the participants were choice blind. Indeed, many participants confabulated by giving articulate and plausible reasons for a choice they apparently never made. "Oh, she looks like an aunt of mine, and she seems nicer than the other one." Well, I thought she had more personality in a way. She was the most appealing to me. And so on. The behavior observed by Nisbet and Wilson in the Stockings experiment and by Johansen and colleagues in the choice blindness studies are striking cases of self observation and self interpretation. When explaining why they made their choices, participants do not exhibit any peculiar access to their mental states and processes. Instead, they rely on the same observational and interpretive processes on which they rely when they think about why other people make choices. For example, think about a hypothetical case in which you observe a participant, Angelina, in the Stockings experiment by Nisbet and Wilson. Angelina chooses pair D, and you are asked why she chose the pair rather than the other pairs. Perhaps you will answer in a way that makes her choice sensible or reasonable. You might say she chose it because she thinks that its knit is superior. Or even then, like, you're guessing because, and you would believe that's absolutely what would happen. That you would say, what do you mean? She chose it because she thinks that it's a better stocking. It's like, hold on, bro. Slow down, bro. How do you know that, bro? Oh, because why else would she choose it? Oh, rationality and will illusions are why you are saying that. When explaining why they made their choices, Angelina, perhaps you will answer in a way that makes your choice sensible or reasonable. You might say, she chose it because she thinks that its niche is superior. Or, she chose it because she thinks it is more elastic than the others. You will not say, she chose it because of the position effect, unless you are a psychology student. As Nisbet and Wilson point out, such factors, e.g., the position effect, should seem particularly implausible as reasons for liking or disliking an object. And it seems outrageous that such a judgment as one concerning the quality of a nightgown might be affected by its position in a series. The experiment's result can be nicely explained by the self-observation hypothesis. Angelina needs to observe her own behavior when reporting why she chose pair D, just like you need to when you explain why she chose pair D. Again, think about the hypothetical case where you observe a participant, Neville, in the choice blindness study by Johansen and colleagues. Neville chooses photo A, and you are asked why he chose photo B, since photo A has been switched with photo B. Because you do not have any direct or introspective access to Neville's preference for photo A, you might fail to recognize the swap. Perhaps you will answer the question so that his choice seems sensible or reasonable. You might say, oh, he chose it because he thinks that the woman in the photo seems nicer than the other one. Or, oh, he chose it because he thinks that the woman had more personality. The experimental result can be nicely explained by the self-observation hypothesis. Neville needs to observe his own behavior when reporting why he allegedly chose photo B, just like you do when explaining why he allegedly chose it. Success and failure of self-knowledge. Before moving on, let us consider an issue concerning confabulation studies. It is tempting to think that cases of confabulation involve inaccurate or unsuccessful judgments about one's own mental states. Participants in the studies discussed above are bad at self-knowledge. Because of this, confabulation studies might threaten not only the idea of peculiar self-knowledge, but also the idea of privileged self-knowledge. But is this really the right interpretation of confabulation studies? Yes, I think so. Based on the evidence of pervasive confabulation concerning reasons for attitudes and choices, Krista Lavlor argues that mental state self-attributions lack authority as they are not as accurate as third-party attributions and fail to correlate with a person's future behavior. on the basis that ill grounded explanations of attitudes and choices are virtually indistinguishable from well grounded ones and are common, one might argue that we should be genuinely concerned about the reliability of self knowledge. Indeed, some interpret the standard philosophical account of confabulation as an instance of failed mind reading. Confabulation shows that people make mistakes when attributing mental states themselves. I just had a thought. Um, it has nothing to do with any of this. It has to do with this. So, can I actually stream uh I can't like stream to two services at once? Oh, how to multi-stream with OBS. Oh. Ooh, that's cool. All right. I want it. I'm gonna get it. Hold on. Hold on a second now. Let's see what the pricing is. Standard $16 a month. You can multi-stream on 3 channels. Huh. Ha 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 ha. Oh, I can get started for free with, and then we'll be streaming to 2 channels. That'll be good. Okay, I gotta pay. Let's find out what ChatGPT thinks that I should do for the other channel. Golly. Uh, Copy and paste links into your streaming software. What? Oh, pop-up window blocked, I see. Is it done? Jesus Christ, what is it, frozen? What is this? Oh, right. Haven't I done this, bro? Alright, so let's exit out. Nope, I guess I haven't. Okay, add channel. YouTube. Continue. Continue. Great, so I granted it access. Great, it's processing that. So that channel has been added. All right, so yeah, so let's see what other platform ChatGPT recommends. Okay, so it's freezing. Well, there are a lot of oh, like I could go live on Instagram. Huh. That's not a bad idea. Instagram might be the best bet, right? Oh, Twitch is surprisingly good for non-gaming content. Okay. Okay, so we're gonna go Twitch. Authorize. Okay. So connected. All right, let's I think we're gonna stop the stream and yeah, we're gonna give it a try. Great. See you soon.